Welcome back to Real Estate 101. Today we're going to continue our discussion on home renovations and talk a little bit about soundproofing. And I'm pleased to be joined once again by Daniel Ott of White Willow Design. Dan, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, Dan. So why would anybody want to use soundproofing? Well,
there's a variety of reasons. We start with the code and legal reasons for dividing different units in an apartment building or a semi-detached home. But most often it's because someone wants privacy.
Okay, so which rooms or spaces does soundproofing normally apply to?
So we always used to talk about soundproofing bathrooms, right? And maybe the mechanical room if you were finishing the basement.
Really? Bathrooms?
Yeah. You don't want to hear someone going to the bathroom.
Yeah, I could see that, but I've never heard of anybody actually doing it.
It's the most usual room to talk about. But now we're talking a lot more about home theaters or sound recording rooms. People are putting these in their homes. And then you have these little spaces too. So the plumbing stack from that bathroom is running through your living room. You have guests over, you don't want to hear your kids going to the bathroom upstairs. So you soundproof just that plumbing stack.
Right.
I have a client right now who lives next door to a public park and a skating arena. And so the two walls that are adjoining that arena are going to be super soundproofed, if you will, because she doesn't want to hear people because there's people there all the time.
Right. All right, so what components are used to make a soundproof wall or soundproof floor different than a regular wall or floor?
So to answer that, Joe, I got to talk more about the science behind sound. So sound is waves that travels from, say, my voice to your ear. And as it travels through a gas, like the air around us, or a liquid, it dissipates quickly. But as it travels through a solid, it's almost the same volume at the other side of the solid, such as a floor joist. Ceiling and a floor joist. It's almost the same volume at the top as it was at the bottom. So by definition then, soundproofing is getting rid of as much of the contact of the solids and making it go through more air instead of the solids.
Right, so you're trying to deaden the sound.
Yes.
Okay, so what exactly are you using to try to deaden that sound?
So it's interesting. So air pockets are what stop a lot of the sound going through. But air pockets are also what insulate us from heat and cold really well.
Right.
So one of the best components to use in soundproofing is actually insulation. So when we have a drywall ceiling and then a joist on top, solid contact all the way along that joist, solid to solid. And then we have the subfloor on top, and again, we have solid contact all the way along that joist and the next joist from one to the other. And the sound transmission from solid to solid to solid and back into the air up above or down below.
The vibration
is very much heard. So if we can deaden that, we're great. If we pack insulation in between the joists, we can, it's still solid to solid, but the insulation along that joist is absorbing the vibrations of that joist. So even though we still have solid to solid, we're absorbing as much of the vibrations as possible.
Right.
So it's not the fact that the sound is being deadened in the insulation itself, although it is a bit of it. It's also sucking out of the sound out of that joist. Now, if we go a little bit further, we still have all that solid contact all the way along that joist, top and bottom. If we can separate that a bit without, ruining structure, then we can deaden sound a bit more. So one of the ways we do this is metal furring channels on the bottom. So we have the joist, and we put the metal furring channels perpendicular to, and now we create a grid pattern.
Right, I've seen those.
Yes. Usually resilient channel, but there's a bunch of different ones.
Exactly.
So instead of having solid contact all the way along, we only have a contact every, say, 2 feet where there's a screw. And it's only that one screw every 2 feet that has that solid contact. And now because the drywall is not actually touching the joists, we have a great sound deadening. That client I talked about with the arena beside her, we're doing that same thing in her walls. So we have the insulation in the walls. We're actually strapping out the walls to get a little bit more.
Right.
And then we're putting the metal furring channels themselves before putting the drywall. And then we're going to get a really good soundproofing in between.
So you're creating a little barrier there.
Yes. And then past that, we have different types of insulation as well.
Okay, so let's talk about, is this when you talk about insulation, is it just the regular insulation is soundproof?
Yes and no. So there's a lot of differing theories out there, but this is going to be my take on things. So at 3.5 inches thick, so a 2x4 wall,
right?
The best thing you're going to get is sound insulation. So people usually think of Roxwell Safe and Sound.
Right.
That is going to be the best thing in your 2x4 wall. When you get thicker, so it's 2x6 or 2x8, whether it's a wall or a floor, soundproof insulation is still going to be better, but you're not as much going to notice the difference. So you can use something different. Say the white or pink or yellow fiberglass bat insulation. I prefer to use that because it doesn't itch as much as Roxol.
Right.
But they're going to be almost the same. But now we can change even past that sort of thing, but spray foam. So there's two types of spray foam. There's closed cell and open cell. So closed cell, it's all tight knit, basically creating a solid.
So closed cell, is that like that spray foam stuff?
Yeah, but there's two types.
Right, okay.
So the closed cell, again, we're creating a solid. So the sound transmission is very great. But when we do open cell, we have all open celled air pockets within the foam. And that's creating, again, those air pockets that are absorbing that sound.
The barrier.
So the best soundproof system that you can make is actually open cell spray foam in at least 2x6 or greater, and then the resilient channel, and that's going to get you the best soundproofing that you can get. Aside from completely different building practices. So in new, say, semi-detached homes, we build what are called party walls. So instead of having a wall all the way through with that the studs are straight, we actually stagger the studs so that they're not, you don't actually have, you're basically creating two walls that are zigzagging into
Right.
each other.
It's an odd
and now you
pattern.
have no contact whatsoever.
Okay, so we've talked about walls and we've talked about floors. What about windows and attic? Because those are two other areas of the home that you get a lot of sound through.
Yeah. So let's talk about the attic first. Remember, it doesn't really matter what kind of insulation you have. Once you get thick, you're still going to get a lot of sound absorption. So in an attic these days, code is R50. So that's like 15 inches of insulation. I don't care what you put in for insulation. That's going to absorb so much sound you don't need anything else.
Right.
Besides that, between walls or between floors, you have other people around. But why are you insulating yourself from the birds?
Right.
It doesn't really matter.
Right.
Now, windows, though, kind of flies in the theory of the sound. So, or what I talked about before about sound absorption. So now we're actually talking about more solid instead of less.
For the windows.
Yes. The thicker the glass, the less it vibrates. So the less the sound. They actually there's certain companies out there that make what they claim are soundproof windows, and they make actually really thick paned glass. Another way to do that is to add a third layer. We all have two panes now, but if we add a third layer, we're going to deaden the sound a bit more. And then the other thing with windows too is depending on the type of gas that is in between, it might absorb the sound a bit better.
Okay, so when we talk about these windows, I mean, the windows is something for the manufacturer. It's not something per se that you could do.
Although it's something to look at, right? Like you can order a window from the same manufacturer as 2-pane or 3-pane.
3-pane.
So that same client again, the windows in those two walls are going to be 3-pane, but the windows in the rest of the house are only going to be 2-pane because we don't care as much.
Right. Okay, so when would you say is the best time to start thinking about soundproofing?
As you're building a house, or before you're building a house, really. Unfortunately, most people already live in the house.
That's built, yeah.
Yeah. So unless you're building a new custom home, which I can definitely help with,
Right.
whenever you're renovating, make sure you think about it. It's something people don't often think about until halfway through, and they're saying, let's insulate that bathroom wall. But let's think about that sort of stuff well beforehand. Make sure it's put into the design. We'll actually write on the drawings that you need to put Roxol Safe and Sound on this bathroom 2x4 wall, and make sure it doesn't get missed.
All right, Dan. So for people watching and listening who may want to get in contact, how can they reach you?
They can email me, info@whitewillowdesign.ca, or you can call 905-220-9419.
All right, Dan, great stuff. Thanks for coming on today's show.
Thanks.
So there you have it. If you're looking for more information on soundproofing or home renovations, get in contact with Daniel Ott of White Willow Design. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like, comment, and share our video. I'm Joe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.